Fox News. She went in there dripping with condescension. 15 minutes later.
For decades, Bill O'Reilly was one of the most powerful names in American media. With his sharp voice, no-nonsense attitude, and aggressive style, he became a symbol of conservative television. Millions of viewers tuned in every night to hear him deliver strong opinions on politics, culture, and morality. He built a brand around being tough but fair, a man who claimed to defend traditional values. To his audience, O'Reilly was the fearless protector of the no-spin zone. But behind this image, a much darker story was unfolding inside his home. His wife, Maureen McPhilmy, once stood by him as his career reached incredible heights. Yet over time, she uncovered troubling secrets, and her silence eventually broke. Court documents, testimonies, and shocking revelations painted a very different picture of the man viewers trusted. The truth was filled with allegations of control, intimidation, harassment, and even violence. In the end, it was not only his wife, but also his children, who turned against him in court. What happened behind closed doors was so disturbing that Maureen decided she could no longer stay in the marriage, filing for divorce and reshaping the way the world saw Bill O'Reilly. Bill O'Reilly's story begins far from the glamour of television studios and million-dollar contracts. He was born on September 10, 1949, at Columbia Presbyterian Hospital in Manhattan, New York. His parents were working-class Irish Catholics who valued tradition, discipline, and faith. His father worked as a currency accountant, while his mother stayed home to care for the children. When Bill was just 2 years old, the family left their apartment in New Jersey and moved to Levittown, Long Island, one of the first large suburban communities in the country. Levittown represented opportunity for many white families after World War II, but it was also deeply segregated, as black families were not allowed to buy homes there. Growing up in this environment, O'Reilly was shaped by Catholic schooling and strict discipline. He attended St. Bridget's parochial school, where religion played a central role in daily life. Later, at Chaminade High School, a Catholic boys' school, he developed a reputation for being outspoken and aggressive. He was tall, athletic, and played varsity hockey as a goalie, where his confrontational nature fit perfectly. Even during these early years, O'Reilly viewed the world through sharp divisions: friends versus outsiders, winners versus losers. That black and white view of life would stay with him throughout his career. After high school, O'Reilly went on to study history at Marist College in New York, graduating in 1971. But instead of immediately entering journalism, he surprised many by becoming a teacher. He taught English and history at a Catholic high school in Miami. Students described him as strict and demanding, but the job also gave him his first real taste of authority. At the same time, O'Reilly started testing the waters in journalism, freelancing for Miami Magazine. In a bold move that revealed his personality, he reportedly walked into the magazine's office uninvited and told the editor he would be their new film critic. That confidence, some would call it arrogance, got him the job, even though it paid nothing. His ambition only grew, and by 1973 he enrolled at Boston University to study broadcast journalism. There, his classmates and professors noticed both his intelligence and his arrogance. He took internships at newspapers and TV stations, gaining experience that would launch his career. Soon, he landed his first on-air job at WNEP-TV in Scranton, Pennsylvania, working as a reporter and weather anchor. His loud, confrontational style quickly set him apart. Viewers noticed him, and ratings went up, even as managers found him difficult to work with. The lesson was clear to O'Reilly. If people were watching, he could get away with almost anything. By the mid-1970s, O'Reilly was moving up in the world of television news. He worked in Dallas, where he won awards for investigative reporting. But his methods were controversial. Some claimed he secretly recorded phone calls without permission, raising questions about ethics. In Denver, he covered dramatic stories like an airline hijacking, sometimes putting himself and his crew in danger just to make the footage more exciting. His confrontational style and willingness to bend the rules made him both admired and disliked. By 1982, he had joined CBS News as a war correspondent, reporting from El Salvador and Argentina during the Falklands conflict. But years later, his accounts came under fire. While O'Reilly claimed he had been in combat zones and witnessed people being killed, other journalists insisted he had exaggerated and misrepresented events. This pattern, blending truth with drama, would follow him for years. After clashes with CBS, he moved to ABC, then eventually to Inside Edition in 1989, where he became the face of confrontational gotcha journalism. He built a reputation for ambushing people on camera, cutting them off, and exposing them in ways that boosted ratings. Audiences loved it, but behind the scenes, his temper and behavior toward colleagues, especially women, were raising red flags. While Jimmy Walker and Esther Rolle shared the screen and entertained millions, the struggles behind the camera revealed how fame does not always guarantee peace of mind. For Rolle, the constant pressure of working in Hollywood as a strong black woman was exhausting. She carried the burden of wanting to represent her community in the right way, while also fighting for better roles. For Walker, the challenge was different. He became so closely tied to his role as JJJ that audiences found it hard to see him as anyone else. This kind of typecasting made him feel trapped, like he had to keep performing the same character to stay relevant. Their personal sacrifices often went unnoticed by fans who only saw the laughter on screen, not the battles behind it. Both actors dealt with loneliness, pressure, and expectations that went far beyond acting. The more success they achieved, the more they had to hide their private pain, creating a silent struggle behind the spotlight that only deepened their differences. The entertainment industry during the 1970s and 1980s was not an easy place for black actors. Roles were limited, pay was often unfair, and respect was something that had to be fought for at every level. Esther Rolle knew this reality all too well, and that is why she became a voice for change. She believed that actors should not just accept whatever roles they were given, especially if those roles were harmful stereotypes. Jimmy Walker, however, had a different approach. He believed in taking opportunities and using humor to break barriers, even if it meant being criticized for leaning into stereotypes. Hollywood's harsh reality forced them into two different paths. Rolle fought to change the system from within, while Walker learned how to survive by playing the system's game. This difference in mindset was at the heart of their conflict, showing how difficult it was for black performers to balance survival with dignity in a business that rarely showed fairness. They happened again and again. Some of his colleagues began to pull away. Advertisers became nervous. His image, once based on tough but fair commentary, started to crack. On a December night in 2009, around 10:30 p.m., Maureen McPhilly walked down the hall of their 4,600 FT home in Manhasset, Long Island. She only meant to get a glass of water, but when she opened the master bedroom door, she found Bill O'Reilly standing next to their king-size bed, pants around his ankles, holding a cordless phone. According to a sworn statement filed in 2011, he was breathing heavily and saying things like, "Give it to Meslow," to someone on the other end of the line. She had just come from tucking in their 11-year-old daughter. In that moment, she saw something more than infidelity. O'Reilly had already paid $9 million to settle a phone sex lawsuit in 2004. Now, the image of a man known for preaching morals on television collided with what she saw in real life. That moment became the first crack in what would later completely fall apart. When she asked Bill what on earth everything exploded, according to the affidavit, he turned so fast the bedside lamp tipped over. Then he grabbed her by the shoulders and shoved her backward. Her shoulder hit the wall with such force that it broke through the drywall, leaving a 1F'd hole. The glass, in a nearby photo from their 2002 Vatican trip, shattered across the rug. This wasn't the first time things had gotten physical. 2 years earlier, their teenage daughter had told an examiner she had seen her father choking her mother. That night, everything was worse. The window was open, the cold air was blowing in, and O'Reilly still had the phone in his hand. The woman on the call could reportedly hear everything before the line cut out. The hole in the wall stayed there for months. Morin said she saw it every time she opened the closet. But the incident didn't stop there. Still holding her by the neck and shoulders, O'Reilly pulled her into the hallway. Her silk robe twisted tightly and left red marks that were photographed later. At 6'3" and 240 pounds, he dragged her past a painting of Dublin's O'Connell Street, a piece he'd bought after a trip to Ireland in 2008. When they reached the staircase, even with her battles, Esther Rolle left behind a powerful legacy. She proved that women, especially black women, could stand tall in an industry that often tried to silence their voices. Beyond her acting, she was deeply involved in community work, supporting education and young artists who wanted to follow in her footsteps. Her insistence on presenting strong, intelligent, and respectable black characters changed the way television writers and producers approached roles for African American women. She was more than an actress. She was a trailblazer who used her career to make a statement. To this day, many younger stars point to Esther Rolle as someone who inspired them to dream bigger and fight harder for meaningful roles. Her legacy is not just in the episodes of Good Times, but in the way she helped shape the future of representation in television. For Jimmy Walker, life after Good Times was full of ups and downs. While he enjoyed fame from his character, it became both a blessing and a curse. On one hand, he was forever loved for his dynamite catchphrase, but on the other hand, it limited how casting directors viewed him. Walker tried his hand at stand-up comedy again, guest appearances on TV shows, and even writing. He built a career that, while not as groundbreaking as Rola's, kept him active in entertainment for decades. His story reflects the difficulty of moving beyond an iconic role. People never stopped seeing him as JJ, no matter how hard he tried. Still, Walker embraced this part of his identity, even admitting in interviews that he owed everything to that role, no matter how much criticism it brought. His resilience and ability to keep working proved that he had the strength to survive Hollywood's tough cycle of fame and decline. The public disagreement between Jimmy Walker and Esther Rolle might have been painful at the time, but in many ways, it sparked conversations that were much bigger than them. Their conflict forced people to think about representation, comedy, and the responsibilities of actors in shaping culture. Some sided with Walker, believing laughter was the most important thing. Others sided with Rolla, insisting that dignity and positive portrayal mattered more than jokes. In truth, both had valid points, and together they highlighted the deep challenges faced by black performers. Even though their working relationship was difficult, the impact of their time on Good Times remains strong today. The debates they had are still relevant, showing how television can shape how society sees race, family, and culture. Their conflict was more than just personal. It was a reflection of larger struggles in America, making their story timeless. Behind all the fame, awards, and debates, it is important to remember that both Walker and Rolle were human beings with emotions, dreams, and struggles. Fame can make people forget that actors are more than the characters they play. Esther Rolle wanted to protect her community from harmful images, and Jimmy Walker wanted to make people laugh and forget their troubles. Both carried heavy responsibilities, and both were misunderstood at times. In their later years, interviews revealed that they had more respect for each other than the media often showed. They may not have agreed on everything, but they shared a common bond as pioneers in a tough industry. Remembering this human side helps us see them not just as stars, but as individuals who gave everything they had to entertain and inspire. During the 1970s, television was more than just entertainment. It was a window into American culture, politics, and social issues. Families gathered around the TV to watch shows that reflected their lives, and in many cases challenged the way they thought about race, poverty, and identity. Good Times was one of those shows. While it made people laugh, it also tackled issues like unemployment, discrimination, and the struggles of single-parent households. Jimmy Walker's JJ often brought humor to heavy topics, giving audiences relief from difficult realities. Meanwhile, Esther Rolle grounded the show with seriousness and integrity, making sure that viewers never forgot the deeper message. Together, they created a balance between comedy and reality, which is why Good Times continues to be remembered decades later. Their dynamic showed the power of television not only to entertain, but also to shape the way society understood important issues, leaving behind lessons that remain meaningful today. For both Walker and Rolle, fame brought opportunities but also significant challenges. Jimmy Walker became a household name almost overnight, but with that fame came pressure to keep his JJ character larger than life. Whenever he tried to step into different roles, audiences expected the same exaggerated humor. Esther Rolle, on the other hand, faced constant pressure to be a role model, not just an actress. People looked up to her as a symbol of dignity, expecting her to never compromise her values. This heavy responsibility sometimes made her career harder than it should have been. Fame, instead of giving them total freedom, often limited their choices. What appeared to be success on the outside was, in truth, a complicated double-edged sword. They learned that fame could elevate them to greatness, while at the same time boxing them into narrow expectations that were difficult to escape. Another reason Walker and Rolle clashed was their generational gap. Esther Rolle came from a time when television was still finding its voice, and actors had to fight to be taken seriously, especially black actors. She believed that every role had the power to shape how audiences viewed African-American life. Jimmy Walker, being younger, saw television more as a platform for comedy and personal success. He grew up in an era when opportunities were opening up, and he wanted to grab every chance he could without overthinking the bigger picture. These generational differences created tension. Rolle felt Walker was careless about representation, while Walker thought Rolle was too serious. In truth, both were right from their perspectives. Their clash was less about personal dislike and more about two different visions of what television should be. It showed how generational values can shape creative disagreements that last for years. What made Good Times truly remarkable was not just the humor or the family drama, but the lessons audiences took away from the show. Many fans remember how the Evans family, despite poverty and constant struggles, stayed together through love and resilience. Even when JJ made questionable choices, Florida Evans, played by Esther Roll, reminded viewers of responsibility, strength, and morality. These lessons extended beyond the screen. Fans who grew up watching the show often say it taught them about the importance of family, respect, and overcoming hardships. Even Walker's comedic energy carried its own lesson, that laughter is a survival tool. Roll's stern wisdom and Walker's carefree humor combined to create a balanced message about how families could survive both joy and hardship. For many fans, the Evans family felt like an extension of their own, which is why the show continues to be celebrated across generations.